Okay, well, I want to tell you how I had tea with one of the most powerful underworld bosses in Japan. Let me tell you the story here. I was I was an antique dealer. Oh, and I'm going to go to work, but I take a different route today, so you can see some of the different fields and stuff. Anyway, I was an antique dealer for 5 years in Japan, and during that time, I procured my items of industry, the things that I sold, the antiques, the collectibles, the goodies and stuff, from a variety of sources. One of which was a dealer-only antique auction held in Shimizu twice a month. And Shimizu is a nearby city, and that antique auction was a relatively small affair held in a warehouse out in a field, and we had dealers only. It wasn't open to the public. You had to be a licensed antique dealer to come, and it was a pretty organized affair. We had a pretty small group, and we all knew one another. Especially after 5 years or so of working there, I was a part of the group and a member of the community. We had our little rituals where we clapped our hands to start the organization, and we had our hierarchy in this pretty the field. Part of the reason I wanted to come this way was to show this to you. So anyway, it was a routine. I went there twice a month, and the way it worked was you get there early, and they have all of the dealers would come and bring the stuff that they want to sell, and then participate in the auction, buy the stuff that they wanted to sell, and leave what they bought. So it was kind of everybody brings something. They mix it all up, sell it, and then walks away. And the guy that runs the place takes a percentage. And the way that it worked was you could get there early. The auction started at a certain time, and you could get there early and go through the stacks of stuff. They were laid up on shelves. They would have, they would have these big metal racks, steel racks, and they would have trays. And the dealers would come in with their boxes of stuff and put their stuff up on trays, and you could walk around and pick things up and have a look at them and basically decide what items you were going to bid on and what you wanted to bid for them. And then when it was all time to do it, there was a big, look at the moon back there. There was a big tray. See, there it is back there somewhere. I saw it. Oh, there it is. Hi, moon. There was a big tray. There was like a sliding carpeted area down the middle. And the main dealers would sit on the ground along this, imagine like a runway. Yeah, that's a good example. Like a fashion show runway. And then instead of having models, parading down the runway, you have trays full of antiques. And the main dealers, the ones that did the most business, would sit there on the ground, sit on cushions in front on either side, and the closer you were to the auctioneer, the higher your status typically. Now that kind of keys in later as to what about the status thing. Now I always stood in the back. I was by no means a big wheeler dealer, so I would stand in the back, and I would always get there early to go through the bins of stuff that came there, and I got to know everybody, of course. And one day I was there, and sometimes there would be strangers that would show up. Strangers being someone we hadn't seen before, but like I said, it wasn't open to outsiders. And one day I got there, and I noticed an older man who kind of showed up and was being escorted through the facility by the owner of the auction house. And everybody that he met would see him and bow courteously and have a brief chat and go on talking. And there was a bit of anxiousness clearly in the people as they met this person, although I didn't really understand that until later. At one point, this man kind of disconnected himself from the guy that was, the auctioneer, because he was getting ready to start the auction, and he came over and said hello to me. He didn't really try to speak English. He was speaking Japanese, but he threw a few English words in there. But he wasn't making an effort. I mean, I don't expect anyone in Japan ever to make an effort to speak English, and that was just fine. But I was busy. I was working. This auction was about to start, so I really needed to focus, and I wasn't paying him much attention. But he kind of stayed with me, stayed by my shoulder. He wasn't that big. He was a short guy, and I gotta watch what I say. And I'll tell you why a little later. Anyway, so I'm going along looking at the racks, handling things, and he's right there next to me. And he starts noticing the things that I'm looking at. And he starts doing something very strange. He takes them, after I put them back, he takes them back, and he gives them to me. And he says, "Here, this is yours, his gift." And I'm thinking, what, is this guy nuts? These belong to other people. You can't give out the stuff, you can't give me these gifts. He said, "No, here, put this in your pocket." And so I go along, and a little later, I go back and I put the stuff back. I'm not going to take stuff from these people. These are my colleagues, so to speak. And so anyway, so we carried on that way for a little bit. Eventually he disconnected himself from me, like he did the other guy, and he went and stood near the back to watch the proceedings begin. And I took my typical place, which is I was typically stood by the auctioneer, back a little bit, and then to the left, to the right of him, and then back a little bit. I always stood in the same place. He knew what kinds of things I like, and when that kind of we had this relationship going. And when those things came, he would always look to me, and everybody knew the kind of stuff I liked, which was junk basically to the Japanese eyes. I liked the stuff that nobody else liked because I could get it cheap, and it was the stuff that would interest people: broken decorative roof tiles and old bathroom stools and stuff like that. You know, nobody wanted that stuff, but I ate it up. So I was always in my position so the auctioneer could find me when those items came through. And I remember I wasn't paying much attention to this guy, but I noticed him over there in the back, standing there. Now this is a crowded auction house. It's a small area. Tobaccos, people are smoking like crazy. All the windows are shut in the wintertime. It's loud, it's noisy, it's smelly. It's all that kind of, it's got the must of centuries of antiques, you know, coming through on a monthly basis. So anyway, there's that guy back there, and what really, I kind of give a double take, because he's standing there and he is not being crowded at all. He has got a nice buffer zone around him. He's standing there and he's got all these people around him, but they're all standing back. And he's standing there with his arms crossed, just watching the proceedings. Now, he didn't stay very long. He stayed probably for the first half hour of the auction. But before he left, he came over and grabbed my arm and took me aside and asked me in Japanese. Well, he didn't ask me. He pretty much he told me. He says, you know, I'd like to give you a tour of my house. I'd like to take you to my house after the auction. I'm like, oh man, you know, the auction finishes like at 10 or 10:30, you know, and you don't want to go to some guy's house. I've got my car, so it's not a matter of the train or anything like that. So, you know, I reluctantly agreed. Okay, and I'm thinking, yeah, he probably won't show up, and I completely forgot about it actually. And so he left, and I carried on with the auction, and there's people on the other side, so I have to go this way. So he left, and I carried on. I'm going to put the camera down here for a second. He left, I carried on with the auction and the like, and came away with a nice bunch of things, and I loaded them in the back of my car and was all set to go. And at the end of the auction, paid my fee. And what happens? But there he is, just before I'm about to leave. He comes pulling up in this beat up old car. It's not even, you know, Japanese people drive nice cars. Even those that can't afford a nice car drive nice cars, because there's not a lot of old cars in Japan. It's not like the States where you drive around in a beater. I mean, people have, you know, if you have a car that's 7 years old, I mean, you're driving an antique here, unless it is a genuine antique and you're into that kind of thing. So this guy's got an old car. He's got something like I swear to gosh, it must have been from like the early to mid 80s, a little sedan dealie, beat up. It doesn't even look that good. It's dirty, and he looks grubby. He's wearing grubby because he was coming down and doing what we were doing at the auction. So I thought, oh yeah, okay, I promised this guy I'd go to his house. So I climb into the car. He fires up the motor. I leave my car at the auction. It's no problem. It's not going to be locked or anything. I can come back, and he drives me along. And we don't talk much as he's driving. This is the old Tokaido Highway. Let's walk in the middle of the old Tokaido, shall we? Oh, there's a car coming, a rare thing. So he starts driving, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how long is this going to take? And before long, we leave the urban area, and we come to this little tiny road, and he goes up the road, and suddenly it emerges into this parking lot. That, I mean, it was like driving into Brad Pitt's house, you know, where you'd imagine, you know, the Hollywood type of thing, where you'd have the big giant driveway lined up with show cars, real high-end cars, you know, Mercedes-Benz, BMWs, a whole line of them, black and white and sports cars, and all lined up there. I'm thinking, where the heck am I, you know? This is a pretty garden. And this guy's got this, pulling into this driveway. He's the caretaker of this house or something, I don't know. So he parks the car, and then he hops out and he says, come on, follow me, you know, Japanese. And says, come on. And so we start going along, and he starts giving me this truck, walking over this, I think we're going for a hike. You know, we're in this wooded area with this beautiful path. I mean, but it's a manicured hike, really nice. Wasn't that a nice farmyard? Wow. And so he starts taking me along, and he starts flipping switches here and there, and lights start going on, illuminating these beautiful, incredible landscape. Like these trees here, you know how the Japanese manicure their trees? Beautiful. This place is pretty nice, but nothing like the place I saw. Look at that. Isn't that nice? So he's got this beautiful landscaped area, and the lights are coming on and filling it. And then he clicks this one thing, and there's this stone wall. And suddenly a huge torrent of water, like something you'd see at Disneyland, comes over the top of the water, coming down. It's a huge waterfall. He's got this waterfall, and at the flip of a switch, it turns on. It's not talking about a trickle. I'm talking about a waterfall, something Softy Papa would film in the mountains. Water is coming down, and he leaves it gone. The lights are on, and everything like that. It's making a tumultuous noise. And before long, I have to pick my words carefully here. I'll explain why later. A very lovely young woman comes out, really well dressed, comes out. She's probably 21 years old. Comes out, and she speaks English. And she comes down, walking down the path to greet us. Turns out it's this guy's daughter. And she speaks English very well. So now I've got a chance to actually talk to somebody. This farmer's like, what the heck is that guy doing? So now I'm actually talking because my Japanese is limited and his English was basically non-existent. So we were basically just being courteous. And isn't this nice here? Little florist on the Old Tokaido Highway with a big stone. Look at that pine tree. See that pine tree right there? That's similar to what I was seeing on that guy's house. But imagine, 40 of those around a waterfall. So we start going along further, and this woman's really nice. She turns out she lived overseas and acquired her English skills there. And so we go on and on, and we go around the mountain, and guess what? He turns on another switch system, and another waterfall comes out, and another one, and another. He collects waterfalls. He's got this mountain. He turns out he owns the whole mountain. And he has landscaped this natural scenery in with these waterfalls. And these aren't just any waterfalls. These stones, these giant boulders, like that boulder I just showed you, these boulders, he told me, these aren't from Japan. The boulders in Japan weren't good enough for this guy. He imported these boulders from Taiwan and China and all kinds of places. Can you imagine the cost of and here's a business that's just gone out of business. I have memories of that experience. Seeing my business go empty. Wow. That's the business I'm talking about. So anyway, he had these huge boulders. Can you imagine the cost to ship a boulder the size of a Volkswagen, from another country? I can't imagine. But that's what he did. And he had a whole stack of them. He took me later, this giant pile of boulders that had yet to find a good use in his landscaping. So he said, yeah, these are waiting too. These were all shipped as well. So anyway, waterfall after waterfall after waterfall. Each one with a slightly different character. Each one with a slightly different feel to it. And he was a waterfall connoisseur who built his own waterfalls out of the landscape of the mountain that he owned. Now finally, we go along, we're walking. Now this was late spring, so it was warm some years back. And we're walking along, and finally we came to this one point, and we come around the corner, and there it is, this house. I'm telling you guys, if you've ever seen a picture of the Guggenheim Museum, I thought I was back in LA at the Guggenheim Museum. It had the same architecture, that modern, sleek architecture with the glass walls and the like. This thing was immense. Enormous. The biggest thing I had ever seen in Japan. This house all lit up. Apparently the daughter had gone in, or somebody had turned the lights on, and it was just all lit up. It was there when I first arrived, but it was all dark, so you couldn't see it well. But when I came back around, it was all lit up. And he told me, I said, is this your house? He said, yes. He said, it's the biggest house in Japan outside of Tokyo. He emphasized that several times. He says, this is the biggest house in Japan outside of Tokyo. And I can completely believe it after seeing that place. Now, we didn't go inside the house. He had it all lit up. I was kind of getting to that point. I was like, all my earlier concerns. Imagine, see these boulders over here? Okay, look at these. Bigger than these. Much bigger than these. You imagine twice the size of these, plus lots of boulders this size as well. A stack of them that would fill this whole area here. We're just waiting to be used. And he had a mountain of these already in use for the landscaping that he was doing. That's what these boulders are for landscaping. Japanese love that kind of thing. So anyway, he had, so finally the lights are on in the house, right? Or lighting up the house. You can see the lights are on inside. It is like a palace inside. You can see through the glass. Amazing. And then the daughter escorts us over to this outdoor seating area where this table is there. And it's not laid out. No one, they weren't prepared for me to show up. But soon, a beautiful woman in probably her mid-50s, comes walking down the trail with path, this, this beautiful, almost gold-lined path. It was amazing. It wasn't gold, but it seemed that way. By that point, I'm like, and she's got this tray full of Japanese tea and some snacks. And we come down and they set them all out in this nice little area, and we proceed to have snacks. It's his wife. And she's so gracious. She's so nice, so Japanese, so just perfect. And the daughter is so lovely and nice. And now that we've got the interpreter, right, the daughter, he explains a little bit about how he built this house as his gift to his daughter, how his love of waterfalls, how he traveled and found the boulders and brought them over. But all the while, he's got this edginess, this kind of and I gotta watch my words, he's this kind of aggression to him. And at one point, it kind of showed up when we were talking, and he explained how I was an antique dealer, and she suggested to her father, oh, maybe you can help him out. And and that was the one point where I actually saw a little bit of emotion. He just basically kind of bolted up, like, no, I can't help him out. I'm not going to help him out. And there's no way I'm going to help him. Not that I wanted any help. I didn't want any help. I'm that kind of guy. I don't want help from anybody, and which was good, because the last thing afterwards I would want was that to get wrapped up in that world. But so that kind of came up. So everything kind of came to an end. I still didn't realize what was going on. I still didn't realize it, but I was tired. I'm not a night owl. I always go to bed early, and so it was late. It was probably like 11 or 30 or so by then. So I basically politely said, I think I better get going. So I said goodbye to the daughter. We exchanged email addresses, and I said goodbye, thanked the wife. And the husband put me in his car and drove me back to the antique place. Nobody else was there. No other cars were there, just mine. And we shook hands, and I said goodbye. I never gave it another thought. Until I started to remember how the group that I was associated with, I'm slow. I started to gain suspicion when I remembered that the group that I was associated with, this antique group, had connections to the underworld. I knew that was the case. There was one guy there who I knew was definitely kind of a how do you say it? He was a middle manager in the Shizuoka underworld, so to speak. And then I started to wonder about things, and then I remembered. Someone pointed out to me another big house in that same area, and they told me this is a Yakuza boss's house. Turns out this was like another higher, not the big guy. And I'm not going to go into any more detail, but about stuff, because I don't want it. Because here's why. I still live in the same community. They are around me. I see these people. Not often, but I run into them from time to time, these people in my past life, and I know who they are, they know who I am. I'm accepted in their community. I don't want to make anybody mad, and I don't want to give anybody you get my drift, right? I've got to be careful here. And so I'm going to kind of close the story now and say that finally the key that was the thing that made me realize that this guy really was who I was beginning to think he was. I was at Molly's house, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, for Christmas, and Molly had a guest over, a Japanese guy, and I told this story. We were talking about various things, and we were talking about like big houses or something, and I told him about this giant house that I had gone to, and he asked me, where did you go? And I told him where it was, and I said how this guy owned a whole mountain, and his house is on the mountain, he had waterfalls, and this guy Molly's friend's mouth is kind of, and he explained to me, do you know who that is? He basically told me that this guy is one of the most powerful Yakuza bosses in Japan. One of the leaders, and one of the big ones. And he said that, and he added very soberly, he said, and a very dangerous man. Now, given that I met the guy, I spent time, rode around in the car, went into his house, met his wife, met his daughter, had tea, saw his treasured waterfalls, saw his light side, saw a little bit of his dark side. I felt like I got to know a little bit about what it is like for someone in that position, and I got to gain some awe and a strange type of respect for that world at the same time. Now I know a little bit about the hierarchy as well because of the people I work with who were under him. That's why they were deferring to him. That's why the master was showing him around. That's why he was able to hand me these items with impunity. He was the godfather, so to speak, literally, of this little world that I was living in. Now I'll just kind of close with tell you that I ran into the daughter about a year later at a furniture store, and she came up to me and said hello, and I didn't recognize who she was at the time. And she expressed her concern because I had never emailed her. I never communicated with her. Now I didn't do that because of who he was. I did that because it's unseemly for a married man to be emailing a pretty young thing, and I don't do that kind of thing. So I apologized, and we moved on, and I haven't seen or heard from any of them since then. And now it's time for me to cross this green light. I'll go through the tunnel though. You can come with me through the tunnel, because see, you can't go there. That's just for bicycles, and I'm all about propriety. That's why I don't kiss and tell and talk about the Yakuza boss that I met and talk too much detail. I won't give out a Google Map reference, and I won't go into any more detail because I want I want a relation. Not that I support organized crime, of course, certainly I don't. But at the same time, I got to look out. What am I saying? I just let it lie where it lies, and that's the way it goes. I'm a law and order type of man. I had my brush with big crime in Japan. I had tea with the law, with the Godfather. Hey, there's a good title: Tea with the Japanese Godfather. Maybe I'll use that. But now it's time for me to go earn an honest dollar at work. Take care, everybody. Bye bye. Have a great day. Well, I'm on the other side of the street. See ya.